So inside this padded envelope is a particular controller that a lot of folks in the fighting game community find to be a bit controversial. And on top of that, it's also my first one. Glad to have you back, ladies and gentlemen. I am HKsmash, and today I'm going to be talking about the Junkfood Arcade Snackbox Micro all-button controller. Now, before we get into this video, here is the box because I want you guys to see that I have already opened it, and you can see, obviously, it comes with a padded envelope. This is actually the second attempt I am trying to make this video for two reasons. First one being that I had an issue with the original video file when I was doing the unboxing, because I was taking you guys through the unboxing and taking you through what was in the box and how I came to have gotten this device, but that video became corrupt. The second reason was actually during the process of doing that unboxing, I was in the process of showing you guys how the controller works on my computer, but there was a problem. The controller didn't work. One of the buttons on this controller was actually not working properly, and I had to reach out to Junkfood Arcade about the situation, and it took me about a day with some back and forth with some of their technical support team to try to figure out what the heck was going on with this thing. So to bring it all together, not only am I going to be showing you guys this controller, I'm also going to be talking to you about my experience with it, because a lot has changed since I've gotten it. Now, while we start talking more about that situation, I'm going to take it out of the bag so I can show you guys what it looks like. And just to be perfectly clear, I purchased this device with my own money. I am not sponsored by Junkfood Arcade. I am a fan of their work, and I don't know why I'm having such a hard time getting this thing out of the bag. All right, let's take a closer look at this bad boy. So here you go. This thing is very, very small. It almost looks like a 60% keyboard. Let me actually show you guys what it looks like in comparison to the fight stick that I'm currently using. Massive. So when you look at the size of this thing compared to that, it's tiny. It's definitely micro. Now, a few reasons why I wanted to try this thing out. Now, I made the decision to purchase this before I actually purchased a hitbox from the Hitbox Arcades, and I'm actually still waiting for that one to come in. So this is my first experience using an all-button controller. Now, the price point on this one compared to the Hitbox is this one ran me about $215, and I waited about 6 to 8 weeks to get this. And with the Hitbox Arcade, they're charging roughly 250 American dollars, and I probably won't see that until around Thanksgiving. So about maybe the same amount of time. Now, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the controller and the situation that I had out of the box. So in the original video, when I was showing you guys the breakdown of the controller, I was trying to test it out with Street Fighter V. So like anyone would, I loaded up Street Fighter and plugged in the controller and figured, you know what, let me, run into the lab and start just pressing some buttons and see how it feels. It turns out the forward button was actually not working properly. So I ended up having to do is I joined the Junkfood Arcade Discord, and I got connected with somebody from their team that helped me kind of figure out what was going on with it. Long story short, the pin on the switch on the inside of this controller, which I'm actually going to show you guys what it looks like, was not actually working properly. The pin was bent when I got it. And we discovered that when I had taken some pictures and sent some video over to the team, and they determined that the switch itself was actually damaged, and I had to fix it. I just want to make it very clear with you guys that I'm being as unbiased and as honest as I can with this, because I don't want anyone to run into the same situation as I did, because truthfully, spending $215 on a device like this and having to wait as long as I did only for it to not work out of the box, on top of that, having to break out my own tools to try to figure out what was going on and having to actually do some almost cosmetic surgery on it to get it to work again, I felt was actually really unacceptable. Now, this is simply not a dig at Junkfood Arcades. They've done an amazing job at helping me discover what the problem was. My biggest concern is with the quality control of this device. For something that small to be missed, something tells me that maybe there is a quality control issue with how these are being manufactured or how they're being built. I'm not entirely sure what they do after these are built. I don't know how they're being tested, if they are being tested before they're shipped out to customers. However, I feel like, if this was plugged in before it was put in the box and shipped to me, and somebody noticed that this button wasn't working properly, something should have been done, and it wasn't. So I actually had to bear the burden of taking this apart and discovering that the switch was bent. Now, is the issue resolved? Yes, I ended up fixing the problem. However, my concern is there might be some folks out there that might not necessarily have the technical background to, you know, feel comfortable just popping this back piece off and removing the keycaps and diving in on the technical aspect of, you know, customization and also taking them apart and putting them back together. So I'm going to have to dock them a little bit on the quality of this product because it didn't fully work for me out of the box, and I had to do some you know, mechanical fixing with it, and we ended up getting it fixed. But I don't think that's a good look for folks that are getting this as their first product and then potentially having to take it apart to get it to work after spending that kind of money. So pretty much what you see is what you get. You get the Snackbox Micro. It feels great in hand. It's really tiny. It's a little too small for my liking. I'm actually very curious to see how this compares to the Hitbox, which will be a separate video in the future. And you also get this corded USB-C, USB-A to USB-C cable, which I think is great. I like the build quality on these types of cables. However, it is very short. I was expecting it to be a little bit longer, but this looks like a standard USB cable that you'd probably get with a phone, and it's, again, not very long, so be mindful of where you're plugging this in. If you're going to be plugging this into a console, I'm sure it'll be, you know, the distance between your console and where you're going to be playing is going to be different compared to like where my PC is located on my desk. So I'm having to kind of sit at a strange angle just to get the cable to connect to the controller. So yeah, would have liked a bit of a longer cable, but it is what it is. The switches themselves feel really good. It kind of feels like it's almost like you're typing on a keyboard, to be honest. It was one of the first things I noticed right away when I was pressing the buttons. I wasn't pressing them the same way that I press buttons on my joystick. I don't know. I feel like I have a little bit more authority when I'm pressing buttons on an arcade stick versus something like this, where it feels to me like a keyboard. So it almost felt very natural when I started my playtest, which I'm going to show you guys in just a moment. Now, if we take a look at the top of the controller, you do get a bunch of stubby buttons up there. Those are actual representative of the different buttons that you would see on like a PS4 or a PS5 controller. When I did plug this in to play Street Fighter V, it was recognized as an Xbox 360 controller. However, these top buttons, they do work in-game automatically. However, the one thing I noticed was when I tried playtesting this with Killer Instinct from the Microsoft Store, this controller wasn't recognized at all. In fact, it was actually recognized as a keyboard, and I had to go through all of the settings in the game to try to get the buttons mapped to the buttons on this controller, and I couldn't even map all of the buttons properly because it only recognized it as a keyboard, and some of the buttons here are not recognized the same as your standard USB keyboard. So as of now, the only thing I could say is that this controller works fine with games that are in Steam, but if you're playing any other fighting game that is not through Steam or maybe a different launcher of some kind, it might not work. Let's load up a fighting game and let's take a deeper dive and see what it looks like. All right, so we're in Street Fighter. Let's take a closer look here and see how this works. So you can see all of the directional buttons. They work fine. I feel good. I can go forward. I can go back. I can do all that stuff. I can go down. I can go up. This is all good here. I like that. All right, so we can dash forward. We can go back. Go forward again. Down, 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 down. Up. We can jump around. This all looks good. So it feels good in hand. Like, it almost is a little bit strange to kind of adjust. That was like one of the first things I noticed was like, you know, just doing some combos and trying to figure out like, this is what I would do with a joystick, but not being able to translate that with my fingers is a little bit tough. And because the controller itself is relatively small and I have, you know, somewhat long fingers, it tends to like engulf the entire controller. So I feel like I can't, I have to kind of adjust where my left hand goes depending on the side of the screen that I'm on. But for the most part, it feels good. Getting used to the motions of doing everything from, you know, your fireball to a DP, which is not that difficult. I'm discovering that I can press down, forward, forward, and then punch, and that gives me the dragon punch versus I can do it like twice, and that gives me my super. I can go forward, down, down, and that'll give me a DP as well. So I thought that was kind of cool. I have been kind of discovering that certain button presses based on the combos that you're doing will work better than other ways. And I'm still kind of discovering that, but I think overall, after maybe 20 minutes of playing with the controller for the first time, it was not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. It actually felt pretty good, and it was almost like it was enjoyable. I was discovering like a new way to play the game, and it was nice. Not as difficult as I think most people make it out to be, and it's certainly not as intimidating as I thought it was. You know, seeing just buttons laid out on a pad and not being sure, like, you know, how precise I can be with a joystick compared to just buttons. It's really not that difficult. It is just it's a mind game. All right, so now that I showed you guys Street Fighter V and that the controller works properly, I want to show you guys what happens when I load a game that's not in Steam.
Think you got what it takes to beat the champ?
I can hit the top button, which works fine.
Fight.
Let's go into the controller, and you can see that everything is laid out as a keyboard versus an Xbox 360 controller, which is what Steam recognized this as. So if I want to change my directionals, right? So I can do this. I can go, here's my up. So you can see how my up button is now down. So you can see where how the keyboard changes everything. Let me go back. Let me change that. So my up button should be this. My down should be that. My left should be this. So this is actually being recognized as a keyboard. This is recognizing the number pad arrows. So let's go through the punches, right? So it shows page up, page on, and alt, right? So let's do that. Light punch, yep. So you can see I went through this earlier. There's light kick, is enter, medium kick, heavy kick. So I can't even use the heavy kick button to map. There's nothing for me to map there because it doesn't recognize it. So what do we do next? I honestly don't know. So yeah, that's my biggest piece of feedback to the Junkfood folks. I know it's whatever board that they're using to build these guys is likely the reason why this is happening. So I haven't quite figured out how to maybe emulate a Xbox 360 controller or an Xbox One controller, or even just a standard joystick controller that Windows would recognize within this game. But so far, it seems like games that are outside of Steam are only recognizing it as a keyboard versus an actual controller. So be prepared. If you're not playing any fighting games that are already in Steam, you might have problems with this controller. Overall, I think this is a cool little gadget. I'm not entirely convinced that for $215, this is something for someone like myself who is trying to learn how to play on a all-button controller would be the first option. I think for anyone that is used to not only playing on an all-button controller, but also is into customization, they want to do something, you know, that's just kind of fun and exciting with a small controller, then yeah, I think this is a good option for you. But for someone like myself who's coming from a arcade stick and trying to learn the all-button style, I don't know if I can totally co-sign this, considering I had issues out of the box. And, you know, like I mentioned before, it wasn't entirely difficult. You know, just a Phillips head screwdriver to pop the back plate off will reveal the PCB. And the keys themselves, they come right off. You can literally just pop them off. They pull off, and they have a keyboard switch there. It's for anyone that has a mechanical keyboard with removable keycaps. Very easy to remove, so you don't have anything to worry about there. It's really, like I said, not very intimidating, but, you know, some people just don't want to deal with stuff like that, too. So just be prepared. I feel like this is more geared towards the audience that wants to, you know, customize their controllers, and they've got, like, a blank slate to work with here, and I think that's awesome. But for me, however, I don't really know if this was the best first choice option. I am glad, however, that I got the controller working, and I'm happy that I was able to, you know, get my issue resolved with some finagling, and I'm looking forward to practicing more with this and learning how to use an all-button controller and to truly see if it'll make me better at fighting games, which, to be honest with you, I don't really think that's going to be the case. I know some arguments can be made that execution is much easier with a controller like this. I'm going to reserve those opinions until I get a hitbox controller. I hope this video was helpful in some way, shape, or form, and if you guys liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, and I will be looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video where I talk more about my experience using the all-button controllers, and of course, when it's time for me to unbox and talk about the hitbox all-button controller, I'll see you guys then for that video. But until then, happy fighting. I'll see you guys next time.